Guys, this is a fucking iPad. Gorgeous.
I didn't buy coffee today, so I drew it on my iPad.
If coffee has gone up in price, well, I'm sorry.
After all, today we will talk about the new iPad 10, which is very different from the 9th, and find out who should switch to it, and who definitely does not.
I can offer milk, tea.
But first let's find out the price. 34,000 rubles for 64 gigabytes, while last year's 9th iPad cost 27. That is, Apple raised the price of a new iPad by as much as 7,000 rubles.
Dad, can you buy me an iPad?
I'm warming up the coffee with a hairdryer. What do you think?
And if you want to add a keyboard and an Apple Pencil, then to get such an iPad, you will have to get 70,000 rubles already.
Your only chance to get an iPad according to the will of Steve Jobs.
The first reason why the iPad has become 7,000 more expensive is a new appearance. Never point a gun at a person. The most inexpensive iPad now also has no buttons on the front, and it has become as good as an iPad Pro, Air or Mini. But unlike a Mini, a regular iPad has a much brighter case color. But you won't find any videos about iPad Air on my channel. I've always said take a regular iPad first. If you use it often enough, it's better to switch to iPad Pro right away. It makes no sense to pay for a very expensive iPad Air. And since now all iPads look exactly the same, then buying an iPad Air has become even more meaningless and you can just throw it away. And then people will not be confused and it will be much easier to choose among all iPads. The screen as a whole remained the same, it just rounded the corners and it became a little bigger, but it still fits perfectly into the tablet compartment in backpacks.
He enters. It's coming out great.
Last year, Apple updated the iPad mini and also removed the front button from it, but added the ability to light the screen with a normal finger touch on it, like on an iPhone. But last year's iPad 9 did not get such an opportunity. It doesn't work. But the new iPad 10 has such a chip. You can light it with one touch. On my channel, we decide which technique is more convenient to use in real life. But what I know for sure is how to pay for this technique. I recommend a new Tinkoff Black debit card in a space design. The most important thing to remember is that the service of this card can be free forever if you have time to issue it before the 16th of April. The design may be different, but the benefits will be the same. To begin with, you will be able to receive up to 15% of cashback for the 4 categories you choose, which you can choose again every month, and up to 30% of cashback will be returned to your card for purchases from bank partners. Their list is constantly updated. The list itself can be viewed in the application. Cashback will be returned not in points, but in real rubles, which, for example, can even be withdrawn. And cash withdrawal from this card without commission. By the way, transfers via SBP are also commission-free. And if you also decide to subscribe to Tinkoff Pro, you will be able to receive an income of up to 5% per annum on the account balance monthly. There are 3 designs available in total, this one came to me. Apply for your Tinkoff bank card by the link in the description before the 16th of April and get free perpetual service on it. Is 64 gigabytes a lot or a little?
Not enough.
Although it will be written on the box that you have 64, in real life you will have 54, 10 will be taken away by the system. Well, where can I spend these 54 gigabytes? If you decide to install large games, for example, Genshin Impact will take 22 gigabytes from you, and, for example, Dad Jim's game with all the downloaded maps will take another 18 gigabytes. And now you have only 14 gigabytes left. In this case, you will already have to delete something sometimes. And if you just watch websites, sometimes draw in Procreate, play small games, download, then delete movies, then, of course, 64 gigabytes will definitely be enough for you. Personally, I have one big game and have never had any problems with memory. Although of course we understand that 64 gigabytes is very small, but the problem with an ordinary iPad is that the next version is already 256 and it costs 15,000 more, almost 50,000 rubles. Apple fixed one very important detail in the 10th iPad, namely, it installed speakers not from one side, as, for example, in iPad 9, but from two at once, and the sound really turned out to be voluminous. However, the speakers themselves are of very poor quality. If you put, for example, a MacBook in an apartment, then it can even be used as a small column. And if you put an iPad 10, then it sounds about like a phone, that is, you definitely won't like the sound. I'm going to fall in love with you all over again.
I get drunk, I talk again.
But for YouTube, for example, it is quite suitable for itself. Well, it's time to talk about the horrors of iPad 10. Now he has smooth beveled edges here, but the Apple did not put a magnet to connect the last Apple Pencil 2 to it, as was done, for example, with the iPad mini last year. iPad 10 supports only the first Apple Pencil, which, as we know, you insert into the tablet to charge it or connect it. But iPad 10 has a different entrance now, USB-C, which means you need an adapter. And here you have two options. You can sell your old Apple Pencil, go to the store and buy the latest version. It will be exactly the same as the old one, just put an adapter for the 10th iPad in the box. Or you can do as I do and buy an adapter separately. The Apple sells it for $9, and in Russia it is generally delivered for 2,500 rubles. But do you think the horror will end there? Everything is just beginning. The adapter is not directly inserted into the iPad. You need to take the wire that comes with the iPad and insert the adapter into it. Then take the Apple Pencil, insert it into the adapter and then connect it to the iPad by wire. And so you will need to do to connect the Apple Pencil to the iPad and charge it. And the funny thing is that when you assembled this design, the Apple Pencil does not work with the iPad. First you need to disable it. But think about it, the horrors end there. Everything is just beginning. If you decide to turn off the iPad or it runs out, then after you turn it on, the Apple Pencil will not work. You will need to reassemble the whole structure to connect it. And here's a real-life example right away. When I flew from space to the office in St. Petersburg to mount the advertising integration, I had to do this moment with the sliding door on the iPad, but the Apple Pencil was discharged. And of course, I didn't bring any wire or adapter with me. But I was lucky, I had my old iPad 8 in my briefcase, which literally charged my Apple Pencil in 5 minutes. That is, you understand that with an old iPad, it is not necessary to control the discharge level of this pen, the basics are still how it should be. But even after charging the Apple Pencil, I still couldn't use the iPad 10. After all, when we connect it to the 8th iPad, it is now paired with it. And in order to reconnect it to iPad 10, you need what? That's right, the wire and the adapter. Has Cook gone crazy? If you haven't gone crazy yet, then you can sum up the iPad drawing on iPad 10. This is probably one of the stupidest things the APPL has ever done. Moreover, it seems to me that in the next iPad 11 they will still put a magnet here and it will work with the new Apple Pencil too. Considering that they did not release a version of the Apple Pencil, where instead of Lightning there would be, for example, USB-C, and you could safely insert it into this tablet. So, this is most likely some kind of temporary solution, literally for 1 year. Therefore, it seems to me that it makes no sense, if you use a tablet for drawing, to buy an iPad 10. It's better to buy a model that came out last year, for example, the 9th, and wait for the 11th to come out. And, by the way, to the environmental survey, the adapter for the Apple Pencil was sold in a separate box with all sorts of papers. Since the input in the iPad is now USB-C, you can connect a lot of flash drives and external drives. And at first, when I connected my external SSD to 500 gigabytes, I had problems. The iPad either wrote that it was empty, or it was completely stuck, but then the Apple released the firmware to which it added 21 new emojis.
The muzzle of a moose, a pot of peas, a donkey, a hand pushing to the left.
And surprisingly, the iPad began to work with the SSD perfectly, everything starts, everything opens. And by the way, this is an inexpensive way to expand the memory of the iPad, for example, for movies on the road. You can also take this adapter, plug a USB flash drive from your camera into it and insert it into the iPad to see what you took there. This is very convenient because the cameras usually have a very small screen. But I have a problem here, when I insert a flash drive that is not the most expensive, respectively, not the fastest, then the iPad shows everything without problems. But if we connect an expensive USB flash drive with high speed, for some reason the iPad shows only the first file, and all the others are displayed as just a white screen. It's a little sad, because I was just planning to take an iPad to the field shoot to see what happened, and now I'm carrying a MacBook, which is of course heavier than an iPad. Now you can connect a magnet keyboard to the new iPad 10, as in expensive iPads Pro and Air. However, it is quite difficult to find a keyboard with Russian letters now, and they ask for an average of 30,000 rubles for it. Although even in the USA you can go to the website and buy a keyboard with Russian letters. But I decided to save 5,000 rubles, and for 25 I took only with English letters. After all, usually when I type on a MacBook, I rarely look at the keys themselves, and I thought that it would also work on the iPad. And indeed, I wrote about half of the script for this video on this iPad, but the truth is, it turned out to be much slower than on a MacBook. After all, I don't fully possess the skill of blind printing. And besides, sometimes you miss the keys, because they are a different size. For example, look at how the keys on the MacBook X and E look, but they are the same, but on the iPad they are half as small. Therefore, I personally recommend buying a keyboard with Russian letters. And if in general we talk about the keys on iPads, then they somehow did not take root with me. It's much more convenient for me to type on a MacBook. Well, gentlemen, let's conclude for ourselves whether it's worth buying an iPad 10. Considering how many minor updates the iPad 10 received, it has probably become the best iPad that you can buy for your money, even considering that it has risen in price by 7,000 rubles. And it seems to me that the Apple was standing somewhere in its laboratory and thought, damn, this iPad is too good, we need to spoil something in it so that it does not interfere with the sales of other iPads, which are more expensive. And they decided to ruin the connection of the Apple Pencil. That's why I don't want to buy it for myself. Considering that I mostly use an iPad plus Apple Pencil, it has become much worse for me than even my old 8th iPad. I just don't want to bother with all these adapters and wires, so I'll wait for the next 11th iPad with the hope that it will support the second Apple Pencil, which is much more convenient than the first. Well, if you don't use Apple Pencil at all, then this will definitely be the perfect tablet for you. It makes no sense to look at iPad Air or even iPad Pro. For you, there remains essentially the only minus here, it's 64 gigabytes. Thanks to everyone who waited for this video. I haven't been on YouTube for quite a long time, there were some minor health problems that I solved and returned to service again. So I'll see you very soon in the next video. And remember, never point a gun at a person.